Lords of the Fallen is set to release this year. And well, yeah, Lords of the Fallen has an interesting story, to say the least, when it comes to development. If you didn't know, the sequel for the actual Lords of the Fallen, the one that was first released in 2014, was planned to start development as soon. As a matter of fact, it was actually an active development as soon as the first one released. The game was developed by CI Games and Deck 13, so it was two subsidiaries that were working hand in hand to make this game. Now the sequel, the actual sequel for Lords of the Fallen, was in development hell for quite some time, and as a matter of fact it was actually scrapped several times, mind you. I'll have a video on the video description right here on this one if you want to learn a little bit more from that. But one of the most important aspects that people had an issue with was with the sluggish gameplay that it had. Now Deck 13, this is a little bit of a common misconception, developed The Surge, which had nothing to do with CI Games. So let's have that in mind. There's CI Games and Deck 13. Deck 13, they did learn from their mistakes. So when they develop The Surge, they develop this new gameplay mechanics, gameplay loop, where you would have to aim for the limbs of the enemy, and the gameplay was smoother. It wasn't that it was just faster, it just felt a little bit smoother, and it felt just right in the right place, pardon the redundance. And then when it comes to the Surge 2, they take what they learned from the Surge 1, which was actually quite okay, and they mastered the mechanics. So now let's have that in mind. CI Games parted way from Deck 13 when they decided to develop the sequel for Lords of the Fallen. They had several subsidiaries that were working on the title, and then finally when they realized that they just were not working in that way, they decided to found a brand new studio, which is from the original CI Games developer, not Deck 13, which is Hexworks, which is the development team that is going to provide us with this beautiful, beautiful game. And it has the potential to be one of the coolest Souls-likes out there. This trailer that you're seeing right here, it is just a cinematic trailer, but it's just one of the coolest ones that I have ever seen, if not the coolest one that I have ever seen. So now let's break down the things that could potentially make this game be the most gorgeous, amazing, beautiful one if they fix these issues that the original Lords of Fallen had. Again, let's go back with the clunkiness. The thing is that it felt sluggish, and the force on your hits and the wind-up animations, it was just all over the place. It became this gameplay loop where you have to be fighting the enemies, and it would take way too much time and way too much planning for your attacks to actually finally develop the hit and hit with the proper force on the enemy, which is why this game was so clunky. This is what Deck 13 managed to improve on the Surge, and prior to that, the Surge 2. This is the main aspect that they have to nail. Now, one huge issue, and this is the next thing that they need to improve, is that Lords of the Fallen, graphically speaking, was a gem, was beautiful, and one of the best graphically looking things of that time. Thing is though, that the world was not interesting at all. That's the main issue that we all had. The art style and the world, you have some beautiful graphics, and I'm actually quite concerned now because what you're seeing right now on screen, they did showcase this development insight on how the game is being built and how it's going to work in this Unreal Engine footage. But the thing is that that is what they failed that time. That they focused way too much on the graphic side of things, but the artistic design, it was just plain and bland. As a matter of fact, this picture that you're seeing right here, this is everything that you would see on Lords of the Fallen. It was uninteresting. It sure is cool if you have it as a area that you could visit, But the world building, it's just basically the monastery, which is some kind of castle with dungeons, and then the Rogar realm. So those are the very two branches that you will see, but there's nothing more. Like there's just nothing more than that, and that is what hurts the game. They focus too much on graphics and they forget about the world and the beauty that it has to project on your eyes for you to feel immersed and for you to feel entertained while you're exploring this beautifully crafted thing when it comes to graphics. So it's not only about graphics, they need to fix the world, the art style, and that goes hand in hand with the next point, the story. The story was not interesting at all, and as a matter of fact, I dare you to think of one of the characters that you played on Lords of the Fallen and remember what was the purpose. And as a matter of fact, I just don't. I kind of remember to some extent the faces of some characters, but I do not remember the purpose of those characters. I do not know why you were there. I remember the main protagonist, and I knew that he had to smack some bad boys, but that was the extent of it. Beyond that, it was just the Rogar realm, and that is one thing that worries me a little bit, because they are building on top of this Rogar disparity from humankind, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be enhanced. I sure hope that they do, because that's one of the most important things, that it's going to keep you immersed in the world. Some people do not like the story of Dark Souls because it's a narrative kind of point of view where you have to learn from the world and learn from the places of the enemies that are fallen on your surroundings and try to piece up that little puzzle of the story. But Lords of the Fallen just didn't have this either. So it was just an uninteresting thing to watch and an uninteresting thing to learn. So they need to fix this as well. Now the boss fights come hand in hand with the clunkiness of the game. As a matter of fact, the boss fights on themselves, I just can't remember any memorable boss fight, because it was just this gameplay loop where they had to find, of course, it is a kind of game that you have to find your openings and attack, but the preparation of the blow, the winding of your attacks, both of your attacks and the enemies, it was just all over the place. That I do not remember any memorable boss fight that you have in this game, so that is something that they need to fix. And it is not only about the skeleton and the rig of the enemy, it's the mechanics and what kind of cool attacks are going to have to make you thinking how are you going to approach it next, because that's the beauty of Souls games, that every boss, there are some humanoid enemies that you can just dodge and that's it, but there's some other ones that have very specific attacks and skills that will make you think I have to approach this in this way for this specific boss. Now, gear progression is one of the most hated things for me in this game. Now, the fashion on itself, it was cool. You had some really cool armors, but it's just uninteresting to find armors because you have to forget about the previous one that you have. That is something that Neo, Dark Souls, The Surge, all of these Souls-likes, they provide you gear and they make you feel attached to this gear. It is not something from a regular RPG, not that there's anything wrong with the regular RPGs, but this is not the kind of game that you want to find something and then just discard it once you find the next cool thing. And I sure as hell did felt the need to discard most of my armor sets in this game, and they were some of the coolest ones that I had, and I just didn't want to part ways with them, but I had to. That is also true for the weapons. The gear progression on the weapons, as soon as you got something better, you would have to discard something that you had previously. But what if I liked my weapon, dude? This is the kind of game that have different animations, and if you have more weapons, you feel attached to something and you want to keep it. This is a game that is not going to allow you, which leads us to the next point, which is builds. There are three main builds that you were able to do in Lords of the Fallen, which was melee warrior with big huge weapons, a kind of a rogue with daggers and whatnot, and then the faith caster cleric. Now, there was not really any kind of versatility, and as a matter of fact, if you remember correctly, I do remember this, in this game you needed to go clunkier and clunkier and clunkier. The clunkiest weapons in this game were the ones that you would end up using because they were the most damaging ones and the ones that would take advantage of the gameplay loop of this clunkiness the most. I did play several playthroughs in this game back in the day. I did make a rogue, and I do remember that I was using a staff that I felt attached to, but it was just that. Whereas with the hammers and gauntlets and the swords, I did use several different swords because they were just better, and I enjoyed them more because the game felt built towards that, making a big, huge boy, clunky boy that is just going to whack things on the face. And it takes away that versatility that Souls games give you, that Neo games give you, where you have different weapons and they have different animations. And sure, there is the stability and the balance of the weapons. Some weapons are naturally going to be better than other ones because of versatility and balancing issues, but in those games you have the option to use something different that is going to allow you to progress through the game without having to mind that much about using a more powerful weapon that you had to have because you have to discard the previous one that you have. If they manage to fix all of these issues, which are quite a lot, mind you, this game has the potential to be one of the most interesting and amazing Souls-likes out there. Anyways, that was all for me, guys. If you like the content, if you like the information, and like the video, super appreciated. Subscribe to the channel before you close the door, and no one told you today you're a gorgeous and beautiful person. You are indeed a gorgeous and beautiful, beautiful person. I will be seeing you goddamn gorgeous and beautiful people in the next one, and goodbye.